This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, wrestling fans! It's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. Welcome to our new feature, Superstar Showcase, where we look at wrestling legends from a particular promotion or a type of wrestler, such as a high flyer. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at WWF All Stars 1980 to 1983. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Here are the criteria. This time around, we're looking at the WWF from 1980 to 1983. Don't worry if some of your favorites aren't here, as we'll revisit this era down the road. Bob Backlund. In 1980, Bob Backlund was in his second year as WWF Champion. Backlund had big shoes to fill, not only in the case of following longtime WWF champion Bruno Sammartino, but also heel champion superstar Billy Graham, who began winning over fans with his charisma, promos, and spectacular physique before Backlund dethroned him. Nonetheless, WWF promoter Vincent James McMahon, aka Vince Sr., was confident that Backlund, who had earned All-American status in college wrestling and football, could carry the torch of other babyface champions like Bruno Sammartino and Pedro Morales. And by 1980, it was clear Backlund was living up to McMahon's expectations. Although Backlund wasn't the ethnic-based champion of the aforementioned wrestlers, he had the everyman appeal McMahon believed fans could relate to. According to historian, promoter, and announcer Larry Matysik, promoter Sam Muchnick suggested Backlund to Vince. Vince wanted an All-American boy. That's what he wanted, and Sam was the one who suggested Bob Backlund. It was before the Von Erichs really clicked here, and Ted DiBiase was still a little behind, so he was the option. Bob Backlund's technical skills contrasted to the roughhouse tactics seen in past babyface champions, particularly Bruno Sammartino, who had wrestling skills but inevitably ended up brawling against his opponents when they pushed him too far with rule-breaking tactics. Backlund proved a hit at the box office, and his reign featured some white-hot programs against some of wrestling's most hated heels. The WWF Champion could work against any style of heel, whether it was playing David to Goliath-like wrestlers such as Killer Khan, Big John Studd, or Hulk Hogan, or battling heels with great technical skills such as Greg the Hammer Valentine, the Magnificent Muraco, Adrian Adonis in his pre-adorable days, and Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. The WWF Champion also worked high-profile title unification matches against NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race and later NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair. The matches ended inconclusively, like any title unification matches during the era involving the NWA, WWF, or AWA World Championships. While Backlund's promo skills were average on a good day, his ability to draw in the main event cannot be denied. While critics have claimed that Backlund's ability to draw was due to the WWF booking a strong undercard, that was also the case in the 1960s and 1970s. Granted, Backlund's character of an all-American hero eventually grew old, leading to some fans joining heels and calling him Howdy Doody for his resemblance to the popular 1950s ventriloquist doll. Nonetheless, Backlund maintained the fan base, much as John Cena was later cheered and booed. Don Muraco. Whether you call him the Magnificent Muraco or the Prince of Darkness, Don Muraco was mad, bad, and dangerous to know. Muraco's 2 reigns as Intercontinental Champion gave babyfaces a singles title to compete for, due to the WWF's policy against booking babyface versus babyface matches, which ruled out any babyface challenging Bob Backlund. Muraco's lengthy reigns as Intercontinental Champion reflected his ability to draw, as WWF fans pony up the dough to see their favorite hero attempt to take the title off Muraco. The Hawaiian-born superstar began wrestling in 1970, working globally until he entered the WWF in 1981. Muraco was paired with manager Captain Lou Albano, and while Muraco had perfected his promo skills, he understood the WWF's formula of pairing heels with managers. The WWF managers did their part. The people were educated in that direction. I don't think it detracted much. As noted in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, The Heels, Lou Albano was a big admirer of Muraco's work ethic. He did his job well. Got out there, and also, verbally, he could get out there and express himself. He did a lot of takes himself, where he didn't have to count on just the manager. People accepted him as a villain, And that was it. Muraco's feuds with Pedro Morales, Rocky Johnson, and Jimmy Superfly Snuka over the Intercontinental Championship made for entertaining matches, and like Bob Backlund, Muraco could work against different styles of wrestlers. Given his skills, matches against WWF Champion Bob Backlund were inevitable, and they resulted in some of the best matches fans had seen in years. While Muraco wouldn't best Backlund for his belt, they had 60-minute Broadways that entered wrestling lore. Oddly enough, promoter Vince McMahon Sr. was reluctant to book the Broadways. According to Bob Backlund, as a general matter, Vince Sr. wasn't big on Broadways. He was worried about anyone being able to properly pace a match to hold the crowd's attention for an hour, because in the history of the WWF, there hadn't been anyone with enough of a repertoire to pull off an hour-long match without having it become repetitive. While the 60-minute matches were classics, they took their toll on the two Mat Maestros. As Backlund tells it, when the match was over, Muraco and I were both drenched with sweat. I had lost 5 pounds in the ring during that hour, and Don, who was about 50 pounds heavier than I, lost more. We were exhausted, but exhilarated at the same time, and when we came through the curtain, Vince Sr. congratulated both of us with more enthusiasm than I had seen him display since the Patterson double knockout. According to Backlund, McMahon booked 6 more Broadways, including one day where both champions would have to wrestle 2 Broadways in the same day. Don Muraco remembers these pitched battles with the WWF Champion. Bob had a lot of fire in his comebacks. It was a lot of fun being in there with Bob. We drew really good money together, and he was always very professional and had great energy. The Magnificent One's creativity wasn't reserved for marquee matches, as he did his best to make matches against enhancement talents entertaining. While WWF program largely consisted of top stars squashing jobbers, Muraco had some memorable matches, including one where he beat up preliminary wrestler Victor Mercado on the 10/15/83 episode of All Star Wrestling, while manager Lou Albano fed him a meatball bomber and passed him a cup of soda. As funny as that was, it palled to the moment when Albano slipped on a piece of the sandwich on his way back to the locker room, leading to Muraco and the referee fighting back a laugh. Pedro Morales. With a career dating back to 1958, Pedro Morales proved he still had the right stuff when he returned to the promotion in 1980 after a 5-year absence. The veteran grappler's skills fit him perfectly for the WWF that incorporated technical wrestling with brawling, and Pedro still brought meat to the seats, especially in markets with a Puerto Rican demographic. However, there was much more to Pedro's fanbase. According to fellow WWF superstar Ken Patera, he had a good fanbase other than the Puerto Ricans. Of course, when I worked with him, every Puerto Rican within 200 miles would show up, especially there in Massachusetts, Worcester, Boston, Portland, Maine, New Haven, Connecticut. He had a good following. Pedro's 1980 return proved quite the year as he won the WWF Tag Team Championship with Bob Backlund at August 9th, 1980's Showdown at Che event. Unfortunately, Morales and Backlund had to vacate the titles due to Backlund being WWF Champion. A wrestler could only hold one title at a time, a rule seen a decade later when Intercontinental Champion The Ultimate Warrior had to vacate the title after beating Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. However, Morales struck gold again when he defeated Ken Patera for the Intercontinental Championship on December 8, 1980. Morales worked a lengthy feud against the Magnificent Muraco over the title in some of the WWF's most violent encounters at the time. This led to Pedro trading the belt with Muraco twice, losing to the Magnificent One on June 20th, 1981, before regaining it in an epic Texas death match at Madison Square Garden on November 23rd, 1981. There, Morales clobbered Muraco with the Prince of Darkness's foreign object to regain the IC title. Besides fighting Muraco, Morales also defended the Intercontinental Championship against other top-rated heels, including Hulk Hogan, Killer Khan, Angelo King Kong Mosca, and Sergeant Slaughter. In addition, Pedro occasionally teamed with babyfaces in traditional as well as 6-man tag matches, adding even more star power to wrestling shows. Morales proved a reliable worker and a top draw, showing he hadn't lost any of his skills since his heyday as WWF Champion in the early 70s. Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Jimmy Superfly Snuka landed in the WWF in 1982 with the same impact as his death-defying Superfly Splash. Managed by Captain Lou Albano, Snuka destroyed jobber after jobber with these preliminary pincushions, even doing stretcher jobs to solve Snuka's finisher. The Superfly quickly rose to the #1 contender spot, challenging WWF Champion Bob Backlund and impressing fans so much with his physique, agility, and charisma that they began cheering him. At one point, Vince McMahon considered putting the WWF Championship on the Superfly. Snuka's steel cage match against Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden quickly became the talk of the wrestling world, with news of Snuka's epic leap from the top of the cage spreading via the aftermags. While Backlund rolled out of the way and escaped the cage to retain the title, Snuka's star was still rising, despite personal demons. The Superfly's popularity with WWF fans was undeniable. According to Bob Backlund, Snuka was in the ring with Morales for the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship and drew a fair number of cheers from the fans, while Morales, normally a favorite in Philly, was booed. Philadelphia had always been something of a heel town, so it wasn't that surprising to hear Snuka get cheered there, but it was an interesting development that did not pass unnoticed, either in the dressing room or among the front office guys. Recognizing Snuka's growing popularity, Vince McMahon Sr. began a babyface turn for Snuka as the cheers continued. Wrestling's Noble Savage officially turned babyface following the revelation that manager Captain Lou Albano had robbed Snuka of every penny he'd earned. Former NWA and WWF champion Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, the first man to win both titles, was working a weekly talk segment, and there he informed Snuka of Albano's treachery. This led to Albano attacking Snuka during a match against Ray the Crippler Stevens. Stevens lived up to his nickname, pile-driving Snuka on the concrete floor. Now a babyface, Jimmy later worked a white-hot feud against the magnificent Muraco. The feud began after Muraco left the set of the WWF's talk show segment, Rogers Corner, to vent his anger at Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Muraco was angry at the fans' cheers for Snuka, and Muraco spit at Snuka. Snuka, who was portrayed as a good-natured wrestler, snapped, attacking Muraco and launching a violent feud that culminated in Snuka's second death-defying leap off of a steel cage at Madison Square Garden. Jimmy Snuka became the WWF's most popular babyface, which invites the question, why wasn't he booked to win one of the WWF singles titles? Bob Backlund writes in his memoir that the idea was considered, but Vince Sr. decided not to give him a run with either the world title or the Intercontinental belt because the front office guys concluded that there was just too many negatives on the personal side to entrust the business to him. It would take a man like Vince McMahon Sr. to make a decision that would value integrity over money, and that's exactly what he did in making the decision not to put the belt on Snuka, who was unquestionably as big a draw as anyone in the Federation at the time. As far as Backlund is concerned, had it not been for his personal demons, I think Snuka would have ended up with the world title sometime in 1982, either by taking it directly from me or quickly winning it from a transitional heel champion. Personal demons aside, Snuka's popularity made him a key figure in the WWF, as the WWF transitioned from Vince McMahon Sr.'s leadership to his sons, with Snuka helping establish Rowdy Roddy Piper as the WWF's top heel. However, that's a story for another day. Sergeant Slaughter. Wrestler Bob Remus began his journey into wrestling immortality when he entered the WWF as Sergeant Slaughter. Remus had enjoyed some success in the 1970s, including a campaign as one of the mass super destroyers in the American Wrestling Association. However, his run as a brutal Marine drill instructor turned violent heel was what made Slaughter into a Hall of Famer. While Slaughter's later work would see him slow down, this model had just rolled off the showcase floor, and the Sarge had lots to offer, whether it was his promos, with help from manager the Grand Wizard, his sadistic side, keeping opponents in his submission finisher the Cobra Clutch after they'd long passed out, or his sheer brutality in the ring. The Sarge was a Goldilocks of wrestling, as he was just right for any opponent. While he lacked the technical skills of a Bob Backlund, his brawling skills and toughness made him a great opponent for the WWF Champion. At the same time, Slaughter's ruthlessness and take-no-prisoners attitude made him a credible opponent, even for opponents as big as Andre the Giant. Slaughter's match against Pat Patterson solidified his status as a barbarous brawler, and the Sarge jumped to Jim Crockett Promotions for a lucrative tour. Slaughter returned to the WWF in 1983, showing he hadn't changed a bit as he used his riding crop to whip Bob Backlund like a dog, while Backlund was performing his Harvard step test. This led to another series with the champion that would prove Slaughter's drawing power. Big John Studd. Big John Studd fit Vince McMahon Sr.'s idea of a heel to a T, a larger-than-life monster whose size and strength alone might overcome the technical skills and spirit of babyface opponents. Studd was one of few wrestlers who seemed almost evenly matched against Andre the Giant, and when it came to traditional opponents, he was a legitimate menace. Studd's 80s run didn't begin until 1982, but it didn't take long for him to gain momentum, destroying jobber after jobber in singles and handicap matches before moving up to all-star opponents. While Studd's feud with Andre the Giant is his best-known one in the WWF, he also challenged Bob Backlund for the WWF title and was a fixture in battle royals and six-man tag team matches. At the time, the WWF was experimenting with six-man tag matches with a best 3 out of 5 falls stipulation, and Studd often worked in these. As successful as Studd's early 80s run was, it was just a warm-up for his work during the rock and wrestling era when Vince McMahon Jr. took over the WWF. Pat Patterson. Short of winning a major world singles championship, Pat Patterson had done it all when he entered the WWF in 1979, winning top singles titles in several territories and amassing a collection of tag team titles that would make any wrestler envious. The French-Canadian grappling great entered 1980 as the promotion's first Intercontinental Champion, but was always looking for more, as seen by his recent quest to dethrone WWF Champion Bob Backlund. Initially working as a heel, Patterson turned babyface in late 1979 after manager The Grand Wizard sold his contract to Captain Lou Albano, and Patterson let it be known that he wasn't going to be working for the man he described as a slob. Patterson eventually dropped his Intercontinental Championship to Ken Patera, but he also had plenty of hot feuds ahead, even as he began working as a color commentator alongside Vince McMahon. Patterson's new role was incorporated into angles where heels attempted to make a name for themselves by calling him out. One of the biggest examples was Sergeant Slaughter egging Patterson on into taking his Cobra Clutch challenge. Patterson bided his time, waiting for the right moment to accept the challenge, and when he did, things went sideways for Slaughter, as Patterson appeared to be on the verge of escaping when fans saw Slaughter release a hold. Or had Patterson escaped? No one knew for sure, but one thing was clear. Slaughter was ready to punish Patterson, and he grabbed a chair, beating Pat down, leading to a series of matches. The Patterson-Slaughter series epitomized the WWF style. Two wrestlers beating each other senselessly until they eventually were disqualified for breaking the rules, giving fans another reason to pay to see a conclusive finish. Fans finally got to see it when the WWF booked the two in an alley fight at Madison Square Garden on May 4th, 1981. According to Sergeant Slaughter, neither him nor Patterson knew what the match involved. Pat and I were having all these matches, and pretty soon there was never any decisions. So Mr. McMahon Sr. got a little fed up with it, and he said, "Well, you two are going into a special match." And I said, "What kind of match?" And he said, "It's called the alley fight." I said, "What's an alley fight?" He says, "I don't know. I've never had one before, but I'm going to have one with you two." The match was bloody and violent, finally ending when Slaughter's manager, the Grand Wizard, ran to ringside and threw in the towel. The finish preserved Slaughter's toughness, as he could claim he hadn't given up or been pinned, while Patterson could boast he'd emerged the victor. In his memoir, Accepted, Patterson described the alley fight and its legacy. "We won a bunch of awards that year for best match, and it also captured the imagination of the WWE Universe for years to come. As often happens in wrestling, the WWF revisited the angle of a wrestler attacking Pat Patterson during his color commentary duties. In fall 1981, Angelo Mosca blasted Patterson with a water pitcher, leading to yet another feud, while 1983 saw the Russian Bear Ivan Koloff slap Patterson while he was being interviewed, leading to yet another series. Andre the Giant. As the 1980s began, Andre the Giant was still competing globally, with promoters bringing him in as a special attraction. Whether Andre worked in singles matches, tag team matches, handicap matches, or his specialty, battle royals, the eighth wonder of the world was box office gold. As noted in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, Heroes and Icons, National Wrestling Alliance President Sam Muchnick called Andre one of only 3 wrestlers in history who could attract fans on his own, regardless of time, place, publicity, or opponent, along with Jim Londos and Buddy Rogers. Pro wrestlers' schedules were rarely easy during the territories, but few, other than perhaps the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, could compare their schedule to Andre's. A passage from the book The Eighth Wonder of the World details a conversation Andre had with a reporter where Andre described just a few days in his schedule. In the last 4 days, here's what my life looked like. Thursday, I was in Jackson, Mississippi. Friday, I was in Houston. Saturday afternoon, I was in Texarkana, Texas. Saturday night in Little Rock. Sunday afternoon in Lafayette. Last night, I was in Lake Charles. And tonight, I am in Montreal. Often enough, I wrestle 9 times. Despite being in high demand worldwide, the WWF used Andre strategically, popping crowds wherever he worked. While Andre didn't need a championship, that didn't stop the WWF from booking him into title matches and creating the illusion of a surefire title switch. Whether it was Andre challenging Ken Patera for the Intercontinental Championship, or Andre teaming with babyfaces, including Tony Garea, Ivan Putski, and Rick Quick Draw McGraw, to challenge for the WWF Tag Team Championship, fans knew they were in for a special night. While Andre's opponents inevitably were disqualified or counted out, thus preventing a title switch, fans never tired of the prospect of Andre finally winning gold. In addition to his title pursuits, Andre wrestled against the WWF's biggest and baddest. Whether they were would-be giant killers or self-professed giants, Andre scraps with Killer Khan, Hulk Hogan, Blackjack Mulligan, and Big John Studd gave fans a chance to see Andre push to the limit and eventually slap around the big men who had bullied some of the WWF's smaller wrestlers. No matter what dastardly attack or violent ambush Andre's opponents inflicted on him, the Giant always had the last laugh, sending fans home happy, knowing that justice had prevailed. Do you remember these WWF All Stars from 1980 to 1983? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and let us know if there are any videos you'd like Wrestling's Greatest Moments to cover. In the meantime, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about Wrestling's Greatest Moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.